So welcome to today's episode of the Press On podcast, and today I have my friend Benjamin Ong, and he's an entrepreneur and also a coach to some of the best financial advisors in Singapore, and he's also helping them to prospect, close better, and also achieve their MDRTs, right? And a lot more. So if you see some of your friends posting about their MDRTs, he could be the one responsible for them as well. Nonetheless, Ben, I'll leave it to you to share about yourself, your backstory, so that we all can get to know you a bit better.
My name is Ben. I basically coach a lot of financial advisors. Really just in two things for them is really how to prospect better and how to close better. And really one of our mission is really to help this group of people from becoming a mediocre salesman or saleswoman to become professional closers, and then leaders, right, in really helping their prospects and clients, plan better, basically have a more holistic kind of financial planning, whether it's kind of investments, protection, so on and so forth. We have produced like more than 50, I think as of now it's nearly 60 MDRT in the last like 3 years. Yeah.
Amazing, man.
Yeah, so that's kind of like
there we go.
Yeah.
But hey, how do you even get involved in this industry as a coach, Because I remember a while ago, you were doing some other stuff. Maybe you can share with us a little bit more as well about that.
When I was 22, I was a financial advisor. I joined the industry because I was studying full-time as an undergrad, right? I studied accounting as a student. I joined it because it's an internship kind of stuff. So I went in there, just wanted to learn the soft skills, and then like get out, right? Because I obviously had a ton of stigma and like skepticism against insurance and insurance agents, right? Then after 2 months, my manager was like, hey, you're gonna try a little bit more, and stuff. And then I'm like, okay, cool, why not, right? So my first 6 months, I did relatively well. And then like a couple of months more later, we the first 7-8 months, I did my first MDRT. It was amazing. And it was just a very surreal feeling because I realized that, just by talking and really knowing your stuff, you can actually make money. So it was decent. And I stayed on for like 3.5 years, right? So within then, I had a team of 10, worked with management, so on and so forth. Yeah, so there's kind of like a backstory there. So I did, relatively well for myself. And then what happened was, there came a point in time where I started to realize like when I moved up to the management, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of like drama, there's a lot of like unnecessary events, that's just not productive to the things that we are doing in terms of value creation, right? So that happened. Obviously, just because there are certain politics doesn't mean that you should just leave or whatever, right? Yeah. So I stayed on for a while more, trying to navigate through all these things. And, when you're like 23, 24 years old, playing politics is not really kind of like a game. Like people who are like in their 30s, 40s play it way better than you, right? So it's just kind of like, you get stuck there. At that kind of point in time, it was so much negativity, I just decided to just like screw it and just leave, right? Now, of course, I went to another agency, another company. But I just thought to myself, there's a couple of things that really factored in was, number one, whichever agency or company you go, when there's people, there's going to be politics, right? So it's going to be the same thing again. And then number two, you're just like, started just to get very jaded by all the things that happen. You just want to step up, right? So that happened, which I don't know on hindsight, is it a stupid thing or what, but because I didn't have a backup plan. Yeah, I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't know what to do. So
you're making good money, but then after jaded by all this politics and just, just doesn't feel right, so you decide to leave without a backup plan. And how was life like after that, man?
I don't know if it's good. Now on hindsight, it was just bored. It was about 8 to 12 months, right? So I think it's nearly almost a year. I did nothing. Like my routine was, I wake up at like 9 a.m. I will have breakfast. I will maybe go for a walk. And then after that, come back watch drama. After watching drama, then I'll continue eat potato chips, everything else. Then at night, watch again, maybe drive out a little bit here and there. And then the next day, it repeats the same thing. Like, literally every day. So it was kind of bored. I actually went into like read about relationships, did a bit of relationship coaching, and at least try to maybe potentially be the next thing, right? Because I was like pretty interested in it. Posted content and all the stuff, really keep things off.
So you attempted to build a business because you're bored as well. You wanted to see whether you can make something work.
And like, you probably want to earn money, right? It's like we're earning like good money, and then like you went down to zero the next day, and then it's like, And during that period, I sold off a lot of things. I sold off my Rolexes, sold off my car.
Right.
I didn't go as often.
So you were basically living a really good life to then like really having to sell off all your quote-unquote material achievements and then trying to make ends meet, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I had some form of savings, so it wasn't like that bad. But it was just a humbling moment when, at the point I drove, when I was 23 or 22, I drove for about 2.5, 3 years. So it was a humbling moment where I had to tap my card on MRT, in the MRT station, like slowly stepping in it. That was kind of like, going back down to earth kind of life, which on hindsight, there's probably a lesson that I needed to learn also.
Yep. Why though? Why do you say that?
You know, when you're young, you're kind of like at the top of the world, everybody knows you, and then you have money and everything else. Something goes to your head, you know, and really on really like back then, I was probably, I wouldn't say I was like egoistic, but I probably borderline between like confident and then like arrogant, right? Like it was like nearing the arrogant part. In my opinion, like it is what like life maybe had to teach me that lesson, right? You know, because like if your ego gets in the way and you get arrogant, like it's usually the downfall.
Makes sense.
For a lot of things.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it was a great lesson at that point in time because I'd rather learn that lesson earlier on in life than like when I'm 45. Right?
Correct. And then what happened for you, you know, like after going through such a humbling experience? I mean, you're pretty much living the great life that every 20-year-old wants already, you know what I mean, or 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Some people in their 30s also haven't even achieved what you have achieved, right? So then you lost it. And then what happened after that? You know, like how do you actually move on to do what you do today to like produce so many MDRTs, you know, in Singapore, and is it worldwide yet?
We have people like from Malaysia and
Amazing. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
Almost like a year in that Lao, a couple of like people reach out who was from the insurance industry, who are kind of like my acquaintances and friends. Reach out and then like obviously first ask me what happened, why did I leave, and then number two, they just casually, hey, you know, how about you train us, you coach us, right? So at that point in time, I was like, I didn't really entertain the idea because I didn't know like you can just receive money for training someone. This number one. Number two, it was also more like my notion was always like, you already have a manager, you already have like people taking care of you, right? So like, why do you need me? You know, and then they'll say, oh, it's different, blah, 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 I know the things you do. And then I'm like, okay, cool, I'll give it a try, right? And then you're like, hey, you know what? Just to make it nice, we do coffee, we pay you coffee money, you know, like $50 an hour, and then like, you know, you can just teach us and stuff like that. Like it was a once a week thing. Yeah, it was a one-to-one coaching, once a week thing, and there was no materials whatsoever. Yep. It was just like, tell me your problems and then like we solve it. So that happened, and they got results, and then they refer other people in. And then the same, like those few people, a few of those people who came in the first, right, they continued with me.
Wow.
Like, for like the next few months.
So it's like pretty much you got your first base of clients just through word of mouth referrals and just people reaching out to you. Yeah,
and also because like, you know, I didn't know how to charge.
Understand.
So it's like pretty cheap, right? And it was why not?
And at this moment in time, your business have been running for 3.5 years, 3 years, thereabouts?
3 years, slightly over 3 years.
Right. And what are some of the challenges, you know, transitioning from, you know, copy money, you know, into hitting your revenue figures right now, actually?
I think from a business standpoint, it was a lot to do with kind of like restarting from scratch and learning the process again. Because those few people were like warm, right? So they kind of know me, it was a lot easier to talk to. But then there are people that are like purely cold, who never knew it existed. And then you need to kind of test your idea of your solution of like sales coaching or whatever. Does it work in the core market, right? So that was the hard part. And when I was an advisor, you know, in advisory, right, they tell me two things, right? Either you do warm market or core market, right? Warm market being friends, family, whatever. I've rarely or minimally done core market. So I'm a warm guy, right? Like, hey, friends, let's go out, that kind of stuff. So it was a tough call. So getting appointments was a tough one. And then after that, like converting these appointments to like paying clients, that was a bitch. Yeah, that was a bit.
What happened?
When I was like in the advisory space, my closing ratio for every 10 people I meet from warm were like 7 to 8.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's pretty okay. And then when I went to like core, my first 30 sales, I only like closed 5.
Wow. You went for 30 sales call and you only closed 5. So there's a huge drop lah.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad.
And what happened?
I don't even know like that was selling or what. It's like I was just like trying to say something, you know, and trying to help, you know, but I didn't know how to close. Yeah, so there was that. Yeah, and then like so the key thing was like all these challenges, and then Facebook advertisements, you know, like DMing people, that kind of shit. So a lot of learning. I think it was just like, these are things I don't know. Figure out how to like learn the skill sets to overcome that. And then like when we go to the next level, the next problem, and then you try to find someone or a program that can do this, and you learn, and then like just keep going on and on. Yeah, so that was kind of like the journey. And like, to be honest, I'm probably just at the beginning of this entire journey also.
Right. And in that learning curve, right, were there anything that actually helped to accelerate your learning process? I mean, like some people who are listening or watching to this, you know, could be wanting to build a side hustle, could be wanting to build a business, could be transitioning as well. Starting something is always, you know, quite difficult at the start, right? So what was it that actually helped you to kind of flip that switch, you know, help you to make that transition into what you do right now?
I think there were two big things actually. The first one was just probably I consume a lot of content, you know, from those like business people, whatever it is. So one of the key things at a point in time, they were saying like, oh, you gotta invest money in programs or whatever it is. Now, again, they could be marketing their own stuff. So like, it could be like the investor agenda, right? But I was like, yeah, that makes sense. When I first started, I had nothing. I invested like 3.8k in a program that teaches you how to prospect, whatever it is. Yeah, and then like, it helped me earn money. I invested in other programs that were more costlier, more expensive, and it just keeps going on. I would say like attribute quite a bit to my success or my small little success that I have right now.
What would you say is one thing that you learn in one or any of the coaching programs that actually help you to make that difference in the scalability of your business? Is there a profound lesson that you learned that stuck?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Don't solve for problems that you don't have yet.
Interesting.
There's like kind of big one I can think of. Like, don't solve for problems that you don't have yet. For example, right, if let's say there's two problems. The first one is like you got to get appointments, and then the second one is you got to close them, right? Your main problem is getting appointments, so you should solve that first. But sometimes we will be like, instead of solving the appointments problem, we start looking at, okay, how can I close better? It's still a problem you want to solve, but which one comes first, right? Another example would be like, I'm afraid of if I do this, then my business cannot scale or cannot grow.
Yeah.
But that might not even be a problem yet because maybe you're not even ready to kind of grow and scale.
That makes sense. Kind of like, focusing on the problem at hand and stop trying to create imaginary scenarios that may not even happen, right?
And I think that even usually comes from like fear. In my opinion, there's usually only that one key problem at any current point in time.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them are still problems, but probably not problems that if you solve them compared to this will give you the same amount of results, right? It's just like smaller little problems, right? The problem is that we think of this and then we think of all the 1,001 problems and then we get anxious, stressed and worried about all the rest of the problems, which maybe a large part of it could have been solved if you solved the first one.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense, right? It's just kind of like solving the big rocks first before worrying about everything else, right? And that's a great point, right? And what would you say was some of the, personal challenges that you've gone through as well in the process of building this business, in the process of starting from scratch again? Like
doubts was like one of the biggest challenge. And there are two aspects to it, right? One of it is really the self-doubt. Like when I first started out, and honestly, like something even today, like you don't even know whether can you really make it. I think at the start, it was a self-doubt of like, can you even survive, It comes transition to a point whereby now you have bigger goals and then you're asking yourself, can you even like achieve those goals? You know what I mean? Self-doubt from a place of pain, like you're trying to move away from something, and then there's self-doubt coming from a place of unfulfilled desire. So self-doubt was a big one. We got to overcome all the noises in your head. So that's a big one. And then the second part of it is more like external influence. I had my family members, I had my partner's family and friends around me that sure they love me and they love us and everything else, but they doubted. They weren't supportive of the things that we do.
Right. Let's dive deeper into that.
Like one example, obviously I was staying in my parents' place, right? In this house, my parents love me, right? There's a lot of like problems at home, yada yada, and then they didn't say don't do this business. They were more like, you should get a job, you should blah blah blah, and then they had a quarrel and everything else, and then I had to move out, right? And I just made a decision to just move out because it really wasn't helping. And those were things that you kind of overcome, right? That was just emotionally challenging. Like my partner's part of my family at that point in time. So when we first started out, me and my partner, my girlfriend, and then like we didn't have a lot of money, so we were trying to kind of make ends meet. And then they were like saying like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be just getting a job.
Right. So your partner is basically working together with you on the business, and her family also kind of like, just like, hey, she's going to work out, that kind of shit. And that was tough, but it was also a fuel for me. Like, screw you, man. Like, like you're going to make it,
Yeah, and to be honest, like after 3 years in, like now that we have gotten better in certain areas, right? The same people who kind of like threw rocks back then kind of have a different perspective now.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the shift. Like I believe that in the process of achieving something great, right, you are always gonna get people who don't believe you. And it's not that they don't believe you, right? And it's not that they don't love you, in fact, right? It's because sometimes they just can't get the idea that, hey, you are growing up, you are a different person right now, that, hey, you have bigger dreams right now, right? Yeah. So sometimes you just can't let go of the identity of yourself, right? So even for yourself as well, when you were going through that phase where people weren't really understanding or seeing eye to eye with you, right? What's the difference right now?
I think with time, I think they're a lot more accepting. That's number one. They kind of get the idea that, okay, this is what you really want to do. And that it's kind of working out. And it was funny, you asked this question because yesterday I was like answering a similar question to one of our clients who asked this question. And basically there are two groups, almost 3 groups of people, but I talk about 2 main groups. Right? The first group of people who genuinely love you, care for you, just that they might not know how to express their love in a way that might be relevant or suitable for you. So think of parents, people who truly love, but they say get a job because they care for you, but It's just how they think, right? So this group of people, they just come to a point in time for them, it's like, okay, at least they're doing well. And it really kind of address their big challenge or concern of will they survive, right? And if they're surviving and doing well, then they're there for you, right? Then there's a second group of people who, at the start, they're just like, they're just gonna like think they're not gonna make it, so on and so forth. You can reach a certain level, and then they start looking for you. Okay, they start looking for you, they start asking for things, they're kind of like, hey, you're doing well, blah, 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 let's catch up. That kind of shit, right? So when this happened, at the start, I was like, kind of like hypocrites, right? Because, you weren't there like when you first started out and everything else. I just understand how human nature is. I think our coach, like Melvin was saying, it was a quote that I felt was very good, which was, you can be friendly, but not be friends. Right? You can be friendly with that person, but not be friends, right? So
Makes
I kind
sense.
of like, to circle of people, I just have that approach. I mean, I have empathy, right? Because if I was the other hand, if I was there, then yeah, maybe, stuff like that. Now, then there's a third group of people, right? The third group are people who used to support you when you first start out. And then once you get a certain level, then they kind of turn, right? And these are the group of people whereby they just happy for you. And there's this quote, right? They say like, people want you to be successful, just not more successful than them.
Oh, man.
So that's the third group of people.
Yeah.
Right? And it just shows you like, wow. Yeah, and then it happened quite a fair bit also. And I think it's just a reflection of maybe insecurities.
Yeah. And how do you overcome this? I mean, 3 different groups of people. How do you actually overcome this doubt, these feelings?
I think it was just knowing that these people will never and are not going to live my life, and therefore they will also not suffer any consequences of the actions that I take. So even if my parents say, or if my family say, don't do this or whatever it is, right, and do certain things, right, whatever actions I take, they will not be suffering the consequences of it at all. What's going to happen to my parents like 50, 60 years later? They are 65. What's going to happen 60 years later? They're going to move on, right? And then I'm still going to be here, right? At maybe like 90 or 80. And then what will I be thinking? Oh, I regret, blah, 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 right? They're not going to live my life. Those 2 groups of people, same thing, right? They're not going to live my life. They're not going to bear any consequences. If I choose to listen to them and I go down a corporate route or I go down a route that I'm not good at, right? They will not suffer the consequences of my regret.
Yeah.
So I always try to have different frames, right, of how to overcome this, but this has always been the one that's a little more sticking, per se. It's more like, this will be the one, like, they are not going to live my life.
Yeah.
No, like just
kind of just like, you got to do your own thing and just sometimes trust the process, right?
Yeah, that's really a key thing. And I know it's hard, when you first start out and when you're doing all these things. But
Yeah, and another thing I want to ask as well, when it comes to your journey, right? In the work that you do right now with all the financial consultants, right? What is it actually motivates you to keep showing up to build this business after the first year of that grind, second year and third year, What actually enforced that? Because I remember you shared earlier as well that when you first started in the insurance industry, there was still some skepticism, there's some politics they had to go through as well. What made you continue to do this? That's the correct one.
So when I first started, so before I joined the industry, super skeptical. I'm just like, it's just bullshit, you know what I mean? But I think when I went in, I think the key thing that changed was 2 things. First one was really like education, right? Because when you have to go through, you have to learn, you have to read, you have to whatever it is. But you realize that the more you read, the more you understand, then the more believable it is, right? Because you understand. A lot of things that we don't believe is because to a large degree we don't understand it. And then we just choose not to educate ourselves or at least objectively assess whether is that true or not, right? So a lot of education happened. So, obviously companies, agency, go through trainings, whatever. So that's one. And then secondly, after that it was kind of like the actions that reinforce that belief, right? Or the information. When you start selling insurance or investments to other people and everything else, it was just like, they actually say thank you, they actually make sense, and then okay, cool, that's pretty cool. And then subsequently, I had to make a claim for my mom. Yeah, it was crazy. Of like 6 months in actually I had to make a claim. I think it was about 23,000. Yeah, and that really reinforced it, and I think like, holy shit, like this actually works. You know what I mean? So that's the first stage when I was joining the industry. And then like now that like I'm over here, like at the first 2 years of my business, to be honest, you asked like why do I like do it and everything else, right? There was no noble reason, to be honest. It was just because of money. Yeah, it was honestly just because of money.
Yep.
Right? Like I needed the money, I didn't make a living, I don't have a great life for myself. It was purely money. But after a while, in order to go to quote unquote the next level of revenue or whatever it is, that reasoning or that purpose of why I do what I do had to change, right? You know, it cannot just because of money, because once you get a certain comfortable baseline, energy or desire to go 300,000 now or whatever, it's just like a lot lower. You know what I mean? 3,000 a month or whatever. So it's just a lot lower. So I had to kind of like change, right? Which was, after I coached for people, I realized that one of the key things was a lot of advisors themselves have kind of like doubts. They doubted themselves also, right? You know, sometimes their managers doubt them, their family doubt them, just like the same journey I've been through, you know. And one of the key roles that, you know, my team and I hold for this group of people in our community is playing the role of like the believer. Every time on the calls they come on, right, it's not just answering questions, it's like you hear them and it's like, hey, dude, come on, like, because a lot of times, sometimes they know what they need to do, especially if you join us and everything else, like you know what you need to do, but you doubt it, right? You doubt whether you work, you doubt yada yada. It's kind of like being a cheerleader. I mean, like, believing in them, that's a big one. You know, just really believing that they can make it. You know, because I honestly believe like everybody wants to be successful. Like no one wants to be a failure. Right? Then the question is then why are people not performing as well as they wanted to be? Yeah, it's because they have doubts. Right? And the opposite of doubts is really just like believing and having faith. Right? Yeah. So every day now I wake up is, you know, really thinking like, okay, what kind of content can I put out there that either inspire or allow people to kind of like believe in themselves, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like with the post I did yesterday, it was flying my family on business class. At the end, you know, if you go and read about it, it's really just only inspired, allowing them to realize that they can do it too. Yeah. So like that's the big key thing, you know, and that actually motivates me a lot more than, okay, earning the next like 1 million or like, to be honest, you know, and that was that transition from like just thinking about how to earn more money to why you do what you do right now, like that transition, that's the tough part.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're trying to find out like what's that. See, money is tangible, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to think of like why you do what you do, very murky affair, right? It's like a very grey area, like, you know, and you don't want it to be some cliche shit.
Correct,
right?
and I totally agree as well, right? I think, I mean, the fact of the matter is that a lot of businesses start because they want to make money. They see a gap in the market, they go out to take it, and it is because of money. Let's face it, right? Every business starts off that way. But whether a business survives, whether a business is sustainable, it actually boils down to the founder's vision, the founder's mission, and the purpose of why is it even created, or why is it even sustaining, right? And right now it's because you see that there's a great purpose to why these financial advisors do what they do, and also for you to actually step in to help them, way that you feel valued and fulfilled.
Yeah,
right?
I think that is a big one. And I think it helps with the team culture also. You know, when you're having people in, if every day you just tell your team, and I made this mistake in the past, right? Because every day you tell your team, okay, it's this target, you need to set this number of appointments, yada yada. Every day is just numbers game. It becomes boring, right? But if you're saying like, hey guys, like this is why we are here. And this belief thing, like even if you're a top performer or some advisors who are like top producers, right? They also have doubts. In fact, there's actually more doubts when you get higher. And it gets lonely also, right? And because like you have not seen a lot of people at this level, and then you have more doubts. Yeah, so it's kind of like really walking that journey with them.
Right. And what made you want to go to the next level? I mean, like your business has hit a very comfortable revenue as well. And what made you want to like, you know what, I want to do better, I want to serve more, I want to impact more. You know, like what was that thing that flipped the switch for you?
I struggled with this like this year. I struggled quite a bit with this year. I mean, like I kind of been through reflection points of like trying to figure it out. By the time I figured something out, I thought that was it. And then after a few years later, you kind of know like that wasn't the real reason like why you want to move to the next level, right? A lot of the choices that I made in my life to go to the next level or to move be better, right, comes down to a lot of what I do not want rather than what I want. Right? So instead of like, okay, what do I want next? I start asking myself like, what do I not want or what do I hate? Let's say for example, when I was young, I was in tough club and everything else, I got bullied, I got whatever, right? And I just told myself, you know, I have no aspirations to be a bodybuilder. It was just I hated to be looked down, to be bullied, to be ostracized, to have no girls like me. I hated that shit. To be unpopular, to be that guy that, you know, that loser. I hated it. And therefore, if you hate it, then it's just the opposite of like what you hate, right? Which is like, okay, if I don't want to be this, then I need to work out, I need to do ABC.
The reverse.
Exactly.
Basically.
So it was a lot easier for me to just think of like what I do not want rather than what I want. The energy is like finding the needle in the haystack, right? Now that's the difficult part, because like if there's a haystack, it's very hard to find a needle, right? But the way that I look at it is, if you eliminate all the haystack, you will end of the day find that needle, right? So I just think of like what I hate, right? So at this point in time, I applied the same exercise and then the school of thought, and I'm like, what I hate? I really hate being average. You know, that's number one. And then number two was like, there's still a lot of people out there that doubts me. One thing I truly hate is that when I speak to somebody, it could be a director, it could be a client or prospect or whatever it is, right? And even let's say they earn a lot more money or whatever it is, I hate it when they talk to me or people talk to you as though like you're just like that. I hate it. I just hate it. right? No, I mean, it's nothing personal. Actually, it is personal, lah, right? I just hate the very fact that like basket, like you earn money, big F.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
come on, dude. Like,
I get what you mean.
Yeah, it's like if I have my clients who's earning not a lot of money, I'm not gonna be like, hey, you're such a loser. And I'll be like, it's like I'm still looking at it equal, just that we are playing different roles, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I just hated that.
So it's kind of like, you see that there's a lot of potential left on the table in your life that you want to really maximize. And the second thing is that you want to be in a position of power, authority, or fulfillment, but not acting like those people who look down on you.
Yeah.
Because I can totally relate to that, because like in the past as well, when I wasn't like so fit, right?
Yeah.
I was also quite chubby lah.
Yeah, we know the
right?
story, right? Yeah.
And I see a lot of these cool guys, wow, 6-pack abs lah, they look great, they're like cool guys, right? But yet, they were not very well-mannered, let's put it that way, right? They were rude, they were arrogant, they were hurling vulgarities all everywhere. And I was like, wow, what if I was like them, but I was better? You know what I mean? I always like this quote lah. I think I probably said thousands of times already, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? So I wanted to be in a position whereby I was able to, with the same quote-unquote powers, behave properly.
Yeah.
And this is why I also inspire. And this is why you do what you do. And I think that's so amazing, right? And on that note as well, I'm also quite curious, right? Like, are there any other lessons in your journey that really stands out to you until to this day?
Life never gets easier. I know it sounds weird. And yes, we can argue that, hey, if you can afford certain things, you can buy business class because it's easier, you can blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, yes, certain aspect of materialistic part of life, yes, gets easier, right? But generally speaking, like, life doesn't get easier. I don't see as though like, sure, right now I have maybe higher level of comfort, but to be honest, in terms of the difficulty and challenges, in terms of business, in life that I face every day, I look back 3 years ago or 5 years ago when I was a student, it didn't get easier. Think about it when you're a student. You have freaking exams, right? You have to study, then you deal with your friends and then all the other bullshit, correct? 5 years later or 10 years later, you're working in an environment, you could corporate, you could start your own business, you gotta face the same shit. Maybe only bigger difference is that last time you're taking $400 allowance and now maybe earning 40,000. But you're still gonna face the same thing, you know what I mean? Right? Maybe last time you deal with your school project mates, now you deal with a team, you deal with clients. So like life actually never gets easier in that sense.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the key things, because I used to think that, okay, it should get easier, life with more money is easier, blah, 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 but actually it doesn't. And like kind of attention to that is, as much as possible, I would love to see like the truth, right? Like see reality for what it is.
Yep.
And this is, in my opinion, like one of the truth, which is, life actually never gets easier. If life never gets easier, but then we choose to see that, oh, it's very easy, it's blah, 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 and everything else, right? Then I think sometimes complacency kicks in, right? You will take your foot off the pedal.
Yep.
You're kind of like just cruising along, so on and so forth. Yeah, but there's a quote that, one of our community always talk about, which is stagnation is a form of regression. So if you just like chill, you're actually regressing.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like, we talk about money, right? If your money isn't growing, it's gonna die because like inflation, right? It just eats away. It sounds so simple, right? But it took me a while to really kind of
Get it.
Right? Yeah, I mean, life never gets easier. And I think why I say it's a huge lesson that sticks with me, right, is because if I can really understand this and embrace this concept as much as possible, then I will not be in a position to complain, whine, and copy a lot of things that is still not good, even though, let's say, you reach a certain level.
Yes.
Because I just understand it's going to be difficult. It is going to be hard, right? Like we're doing this podcast, and then obviously just now there are a lot of things. It's still going to be hard, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's still going to be hard, And even on your 99th guess, it's still going to be hard because like you will challenge yourself to think of better questions. Maybe the people inviting are billionaires now, and then for example, you don't want to mess it up, right? You want to be like the best questions, get the best. It's still going to be challenging, right? It's still going to be difficult.
And I guess the sooner we can realize it, the less we are going to look for an easy way out, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And maybe just to end off on a very positive note, right? Maybe share with us a little bit more about that story whereby you recently brought your parents on a trip, your whole family for a trip. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That's a young boy's dream, man. So I went on a Japan trip a couple of weeks ago for 11 days. And this time I brought my parents along and with my partner, Kelly. And yeah, I flew in business class. That was a huge thing. And the thing about business class is that, if everybody knows, especially SQ business class, it's like super expensive, right? We're talking about like, to Japan, look at the price, right? It's $5,000, the return trip is $5,000 per person. And the thing is like, we went for the trip itself, the itinerary, it wasn't even like more than $10,000 including accommodations, food. It wasn't more than 10 grand. But the freaking airplane is like almost like 20 grand, right?
Yeah.
There's something that I think not a lot of people can just like, okay, let's do it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if changed miles, I think that makes sense, right? Years ago, when I joined the industry, I was telling myself like, okay, one day I want to fly my parents on business class. And the thing is, it's not only I told myself, I tell my parents, I tell, hey, mom and dad, hey, y'all wait. I keep saying, y'all wait. I make sure that y'all business class.
Amazing.
And to be honest, I could have done it sooner, but I guess it was just a lot of fear, a lot of like, what if you don't have enough money, blah, 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 you want to save up and everything else, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why I did it like this year was also because my dad is 65 this year, my mom's 64. Sometimes you do not know what's going to happen the next year or the next month, right? Let's say next year, let's say I earn another 10 million, right? But what if my dad's health is such a way that it doesn't allow him to fly? Then does it really freaking matters whether I have 10 million or not when I can't even do the basic, I can't even pay like 20k, you know, and everything else? Because my dad couldn't, right? Or like, touch wood, my mom couldn't, right? So money, saving up is important, earning a lot is important, yes. But I just have this kind of view and just kind of wake me up and realize that spending this 20k or let's say business class, right now, will be at 28, 29 years old, will be very different if you are at 45 years old, spending the same 20k. You know what I mean? Same money, same experience, it's just a different, I won't even say experience, right? But same interpretation of the experience and emotions based on different ages, right? It's like driving the Audi at 23 years old versus me driving Audi now. It's like, now it's okay, you know, but 23 years old was like, oh my God, the most sucky feeling, you know what I mean? So I think that's where really money plays a part. And we had a lot of things happening in the Japan trip, but like the business class, it was one of those things that I know like 30, 50 years down the road, right? Like even when my parents move on, it's something that I will be proud of. And I think I wrote in my post also, which is I also hope that my parents will be proud of me also.
I'm sure they are, bro.
Yeah,
Sure
you know, I mean, like we all know like they'll be proud of us. It's just that sometimes especially I'm the only child, you just don't know whether the things that you're doing and no matter how much you do, will you be enough, quote unquote, that feeling of like being enough in their eyes, you know what I mean? A good kickstart for like maybe a few other things I have in mind for my parents and everything else. Yeah, you know, one of them is like surprising my dad with his dream car. Yeah, I have it all planned out. I literally have it all planned out. And hopefully I'm saying this because, not because I want to brag or whatever, but hopefully it inspires like any of you like watching this to know that it's possible and sometimes you just need to do it, right? And one of the ideas like I had with my dad was like, hopefully that my dad doesn't watch this video.
Hopefully he doesn't watch
this
video.
Yeah. Be like, okay, you know, I say, maybe a couple of years time, I say I'm going to buy a new car, right? I'm going to get my dad along. And I say, hey dad, you know, which cars, you know, generally you like? And then he'll say a few brands and then we'll go and see all these, we'll test it out, right? And then I'll make sure you test drive and everything else. And then after that, I ask him like which one is the best one, right? They say, okay, probably whatever car, maybe it's a Volvo or Tesla or whatever. Then next day I'm going back, I'm going to do an order, right? And I'm just thinking either I'm going to bring him to the place to collect and say that it's his, or one day I get him downstairs and then like the car is already there, right? Or maybe I collect the car and I say, hey dad, you know, join me, because every time I have a car, I'll get my dad to like and parents to join in, right, to on the right. And then after that, maybe go for a ride. Then I say, okay, dad, this is yours. You know, like, yeah, there's this
surprise factor.
Yeah,
right?
like that would be the thing. Because like 2.5 years ago, I asked my dad, before I said like, what's your dream car? You know, because my dad is the, you know, the typical like go poly, then work his ass off, and then always wants the dream, right? Like, you know, the HDB, the condo, the car, and yeah. So yeah, this was a big one. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just like smiling right now because it's like
awesome.
I can just imagine that.
Well,
yeah.
Never know. Maybe on the next podcast episode with Ben, he will have achieved this dream for his father.
Yeah,
I never know, right? Yeah. That's awesome, man, Ben. So thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Inspiring people with your story. And of course, guys, if you like what you hear, like what you see, do remember to like and subscribe. Follow the channel so you can be updated for more Press On Podcast episodes. And I'll see you in the next video or podcast. And stay tuned.